This series of videos will explain several important principles of visual communication. These concepts relate to the placement and relationship of design elements within a given space. There are certainly more design elements than what we're going to talk about here, but these are the ones which I think will help you the most as you learn the basics of visual communication and apply them to your class projects and beyond. This video will discuss the distinction between a concept and a layout, and the role each plays in the successful solving of a communication problem. But first, let's talk about the importance of positive and negative space in a layout. Okay, so what's in front here? What's in back? What's the positive shape, also known as the figure? And what's the negative space, or ground? Well, if you look at the square on the right, I think it's pretty obvious. It's what we expect. The white is the negative, or the ground, and the black word design is the positive, or the figure, sitting on top of the background. But if you look to the left, it's kind of just the opposite, isn't it? All of a sudden, the black is the background, and the white design is positive. It has become the figure. A common misperception is that positive is always black and negative is always white. It really isn't about that at all. It's about what's in front and what's behind. If you look at this, look at the entire page, I think we'd agree that the white is the background, or the negative space, and that the black word design and the black square are the figures sitting on top of it. They are the positive elements. But often design isn't that simple. There are designs within designs, relationships within relationships. So let's just look at the black square. Ignore everything else around it. All of a sudden, the black becomes the negative ground, and the white design is the positive figure. Now here's a classic optical illusion. You've probably seen this before, but what do you see here?
I don't know.
Well, some of you are going to be seeing a black vase sitting on a white background. It's pretty obvious what's positive and negative in that situation. But wait a minute, don't I also see two silhouettes facing each other?
Huh?
And aren't those white faces positive shapes on a black background? So this being an optical illusion, the point of this is to trick the viewer, to play with their mind a little bit. But most of the time your goal as a visual communicator will not be to trick people unless you're trying to make a point of some kind. Your goal will be to direct the viewer's attention in a very specific way, and good use of positive and negative space is one way to accomplish this. So let's take a step towards applying these ideas in a similar way that we'll be applying them in this course, and that is to arrange elements within a given space. Now as you look at this, there really isn't a whole lot going on. I'm really not moving anybody's eye 1 square inch with this particular layout. I just kind of filled up the space, made everything as big as I can make it, giving the viewer no idea of where they should focus their attention. The white space is really not doing anything except framing the black rectangles. So what should I look at first? Well, we in the Western world tend to look top left first and read across, and then go down and read across. And that's really all I've got. Point is, nothing is leading me anywhere, and it's not really saying anything. So let's take those very same 4 elements in the very same space and treat them a little bit differently. So these are exactly the same rectangles. The only thing I've done is resize them and place them in the space in a hierarchical manner. I think you can see that there's definitely a sense of direction in this layout, and there's little doubt of where you should look first, then second, etc. But beyond that, let's look at the negative space a little more closely. Contrary to what most people think when they're learning layout, negative space is actually just as important as the positive space. But how does that make sense? If I'm looking at this and imagining a real layout, what if those black shapes are blocks of type, or headlines, or pictures? Aren't those elements actually delivering the information? How can the negative space be just as important as those positive elements? Well, it's because the negative space leads our eye to those elements in the correct manner. I mean, look for a minute at just the white space. Look at how interesting that shape is, and look at the direction and movement of that negative space, how it directs our eyes from element to element, and how it leads us through the information in an appropriate way. The information has hierarchy. Now, this is being helped by scale and placement, but the negative space is always just as important as the positive space, and you need to pay them equal attention as you arrange your elements. Okay, so one more step closer to an actual project here. I've taken a classic ad, from which you may recognize the headline, and I've converted all of the elements of the ad into graphic shapes. I then laid out the elements in classic beginner fashion, where all the elements are as big as they can be, and they fill the space from top to bottom, side to side. I would argue that this layout has very little impact. It doesn't really move my eyes anywhere. I have no sense of hierarchy. I go to the think small first because it's at the top, then my eye naturally moves down. But this layout is not adding to the meaning of anything, and it's definitely not telling me how and in what order I should absorb the information. But if I go here, whoa! All of a sudden I get a real clear sense of focus. I know exactly where I should look first. Then I read think small, and I get it. The layout is actually reinforcing the meaning of the words, and it's giving me a clear sense of priority where my eyes should go first, second, third. It's helping to strengthen the concept by a great use of negative space. It has an impact that the previous layout did not have at all. Okay, so this is great. I've done a really good job on this layout. I wish I could take credit, but alas, I cannot. I've merely graphically represented one of the best ads ever created. Keep in mind, though, that these elements of design and the layout are not what makes this ad great. It's the idea. The idea is everything. If you don't have a good idea, then it doesn't matter how good the layout is. So there's an old expression in advertising: bronzing a turd. So while a bronze turd is bright and shiny and beautiful and sparkly, the bottom line is that it's still a turd. If you don't have a good idea, it doesn't matter how sparkly and shiny your layout is. Anytime you have a communication problem to solve, your solution needs to start with a great idea, and that's where the majority of your problem-solving time should go. Now, once you do have a great idea, then you need to have a strong layout too, because a strong layout is going to make that great idea even better, and the effective use of positive and negative space is going to help you do just that.